Hello, dear listeners. Before we get started, I just wanted to let you know that this episode was recorded over a month ago, so you won't hear us talk about the newest developments in Nazi America. If you are a patron and not listening via the Patreon app or the Patreon RSS feed, I recommend you do that because you get the extended version of the episode there. If you're not a patron and you enjoy this show, it would be wonderful if you'd consider supporting it. It's an independent, listener-funded show. We do no ads here, so it's only possible with your support. And you unlock not only the extended episodes, but also tons of Patreon exclusives too, which I do more and more frequently nowadays because there's just so much going on. There's also an exclusive episode related to this one coming up for premium patrons very soon. And while mainstream media keeps failing us and throwing minorities under the bus, it is increasingly important for consumers to support independent media, We really can't do it without you. And hey, if you're looking to support a non-bro Canadian podcast, because you really should, especially while the lunatic American president constantly threatens us, everyone should buy Canadian where they can as a show of support, and I see no reason why that can't include content too. Head on over to patreon.com/nicemangoes and subscribe. You can also support the show by leaving a podcast review. I hear it really upsets the anti-wokes when you do that. And you can also support it by just sharing it online, engaging with the content. There's lots of ways to support it. All right. Yeah, so as I was saying, we recorded this a little while ago, but things have only gotten worse since. They have been disappearing people who speak up in solidarity with Palestine, including legal residents and green card holders like Mahmoud Khalil, whom they abducted in front of his pregnant wife. And they've admitted he's broken no law, so it's really just about his speech, which should be protected. They've kept a Canadian woman imprisoned for days, a white Canadian woman, and a French scientist was denied entry to the U.S. after they found messages critical of Trump on his phone. It really just does not seem like a safe place for anyone to go currently. And Trump has turned that fascist dial up even more. The other day, he posted threatening to make vandalism against Tesla domestic terrorism. He said, "I look forward to watching the sick terrorist thugs get 20-year jail sentences for what they're doing to Elon Musk and Tesla. Perhaps they could serve them in the prisons of El Salvador, which have become so recently famous for such lovely conditions." I mean, these guys are getting more and more frustrated because despite their trying to boost the brand, which is in itself incredibly fucked, Tesla stocks keep tanking, boycotts keep spreading, and Trump is really just laying the groundwork to punish even American citizens for that. This was never going to stop at advocates for Palestine and powerless, vulnerable migrants. He is coming for everyone that doesn't bend the knee. I mean, this is classic dictator shit, threatening to send your political opponents to far-away torture camps. And I cannot believe I still have Jon Stewart defenders storming my quiet little YouTube channel telling me that the wokes just call everything fascism. I mean, if this isn't it, what exactly are these types waiting for? Oh, and Elon is trying to pin the backlash against Tesla, which is very obviously his own fault, on trans people. He's spreading propaganda to his hundreds of millions of followers, claiming that most of the people vandalizing Tesla identify as transgender, non-binary, or go by she, they pronouns. Like, how convenient, huh? And just so fucking dangerous. He's putting a target on the backs of an already vulnerable minority who are having their civil rights rolled back constantly. And depressingly, Sarah McBride, who is the highest-ranking openly transgender elected official and the first openly trans member of the United States Congress, apparently her and other Democrats have been discussing how the party must basically accept Dems with, quote, deferring stances on trans rights so as not to alienate people. McBride is quoted saying things like, We must create more space in our tent. I honestly don't know how people don't understand that human rights should not be up for negotiation. There should be no space for transphobes in the tent, in my humble cis opinion, but you don't have to take my word for it. Many prominent trans public figures have also been talking about their disappointment in McBride being a collaborator, basically. And if you've been following this closely, you might have noticed that McBride is also a very devoted Zionist. And even a year into the genocide of Palestinians, she only tweeted sympathy for Israelis, not a word for the tens of thousands slaughtered in Gaza at the hands of Israel. And seeing this come from someone who is even compromising her own community's rights always takes me back to what Ta-Nehisi Coates said recently about the Democratic Party in general. If you can't stand up against genocide, why should I believe you can stand up for democracy? This usually holds up quite well as a litmus test for the people and institutions caving to Trumpian fascism right now. As much as people would like to believe that Israel's genocide and fascism taking over the U.S. right now are separate issues, they are not. You have to speak up about and look at both to understand this moment. Israel has renewed its genocidal onslaught on the trapped and starved civilian population of Gaza, killing as many as 700 people in 1 week, which includes 200 children. According to Israeli publication Haaretz, Israel committed the largest child massacre in its history. What a monstrous achievement, huh? With the U.S.'s blessing, of course. And this isn't even a blip in Western media. Barely anyone is covering it, and if they are, they're sanitizing and minimizing it. Honestly, these are such unprecedented times, and if you're a person from a marginalized group, you are constantly feeling threatened and under attack right now. Even in Canada, I'm feeling it too, as a person of color and of Muslim background. The kinds of conversations we're having in my family are really strange. And we are fully legal citizens and not American, but it feels so unstable and scary. We've been talking about things like, what if we have to flee? Where do we go? I grew up in Saudi Arabia, but I can't go back there because I'm not Saudi. Saudi Arabia does not accept immigrants or expats becoming Saudi citizens, no matter how long they've lived there or even if they've been born there. So yeah, I'm not Saudi, I'm Pakistani. We could go back there if we had to, but it would be a huge adjustment. Life would be very different, and we would face other sorts of bigotries as non-believers. We also talked about if a lot of Pakistanis from the West, from North America, had to flee sometime, and we all ended up in Pakistan, that we may face hostility from local Pakistanis. There would certainly be tensions if you had a whole large group of Pakistanis from abroad coming into Pakistan, right? I don't know. These are weird things to think about. I never thought I would have to think about them, but we kind of do in these volatile times. We have an American citizen relative who is coming to Canada for something, and we were worried that they would harass her on her way back into the country that she is a citizen of. It could be for no other reason than the fact that she's Muslim and may have a happy Ramadan or happy Eid greeting in Arabic or something on her phone. We just don't know, right? And it's so scary. There's obviously nothing wrong with having a text that says Happy Ramadan, but you never know how the Trump administration interprets it. These are strange, unprecedented times. But I hope my family never has to have these fleeing from the West conversations for real. But anyway, with all that happening in the U.S. and because of the U.S. destabilizing the region, Trump has surprisingly greatly improved the chances of the Canadian Liberal Party. And while everything is doom and gloom, there's a tiny sliver of hope for the slightly less bad party to win here. I mean, they're no better than the Dems, but right now I will take it to avoid the Trump bootlicking party winning. It's something. So yeah, with that all said, let's get on to the episode. Welcome to the Polite Conversations podcast, where every episode is focused on civility, decorum, and good manners. And I'm your lovable, non-controversial host, Ina. If you know me, you know I definitely don't like to ruffle any feathers at all. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 94. I have friend of the show, Chrissy Stroop, again here with me today. Chrissy is an atheist, ex-evangelical writer, and co-founder of the Flytrap and senior correspondent for Religion Dispatches. She is one of the 4 good atheists. Welcome, Chrissy.
I think there might be 5 or 6.
Okay, maybe 6. Fine.
Oh, thanks for having me. Sorry I interrupted you.
No, you're very right. I was being unfair by saying 4. There's at least 6. Maybe when we talk again, like next year, there might be 8.
We can always hope.
So how have you been, Chrissy? I know we spoke like a year and a half ago, like summer 2023. We were doing an episode for Pride, and we were talking about all the transphobic moral panics that were already like in full swing. But now it's like fucking next level.
Yeah, it was getting scary then, but now I'm just terrified, and so is every trans person I know. I mean, these executive orders that are being issued are just using dehumanizing language and outright denying our existence. One of them declares that there will be no changed gender markers on travel documents. The non-binary X marker no longer counts, and it shouldn't be enforceable yet. These require rule changes, and a lot of these things would, I think, require, in theory, actual congressional action. I don't think a normal Supreme Court would hold them constitutional, but we have an illegitimate Supreme Court that is, a bunch of right-wing hacks and corrupt people with billionaire buddies.
Yep.
So things are scary. In fact, there was a recent statement put out by, I think, Pete Hegseth, the new Secretary of Defense.
The abusive maniac and Christian nationalist.
Yeah, the guy who has a long history of domestic violence against women and has a Deus Vult tattoo.
Yeah.
This very normal guy who was a Fox News host, and before that, a very undistinguished soldier is now Secretary of Defense.
Right.
Who only became famous because he was a Fox News asshole. So basically the military is now saying that basically being transgender is lying, therefore it's, against the military's honor code, it's dishonorable, and so they're going to purge trans people from the military, not just cut off the funding to their healthcare, which already happened. And Congress and some Democrats were complicit in that. Yeah. So it's shitty.
The Democrats have been showing for the past year and a half how awful they are. I'm sorry to say, but
Democratic House Leader Hakeem Jeffries, put out a statement recently that, we're just going to tune out the noise and focus on economic issues. And then, Cory Booker, famous charismatic Democratic senator, said, I didn't come here to fight Trump. We want to get stuff done.
Of course.
So this messaging is wildly counterproductive and unhelpful, and they're throwing, trans people and other targets of this regime under the bus.
Right, and I mean, they threw Palestinians and advocates against the genocide, like, under the bus, like, all last year.
Democrats, certainly the national leadership, are worse than useless.
Yeah.
There's a handful of good people in the party, and state and local Democrats can be better.
Yeah.
But, national Democrats suck pretty much as atheists, I would say. Maybe more.
Yeah, well, they have more power, so I would say definitely more. They can actively enable a genocide. So as much as
Good point.
the new atheists would like to,
they can only sort of like stand on the sidelines and say, yeah, genocide.
do it, yeah.
So I don't think that helped, but also I think not a lot of people listen to that.
I mean, if you've been listening,
I mean, maybe Christopher Hitchens when he was alive, and he had some things to answer for, but and I suppose Sam Harris, he platforms a lot of really nasty people and helps them get more.
Oh my gosh, Sam Harris. Okay, so people used to say stuff like he's like a genocidal maniac, like he just wants to like nuke the Muslims or whatever. And I'd be like,
I mean, no lies detected.
Yeah. So I was trying to be like at one point, extremely ultra, maybe too fair. It's like, no, let's reel it in. If we start from there, who's going to take any criticism seriously? Like, you can't just go around saying he's a genocidal maniac. But, like, the past 15 months, he has been, like, bloodthirsty genocidal. That's what his platform has been. Like, oh, yes, like, he wrote this Substack called Sometimes Violence May Be the Answer. When, like... Israel did like this terrorist pager attack which killed children and a bunch of like innocent civilians. Like, you can't just blow up pagers where people are like shopping in markets and shit. That is terrorism. Even if you claim to want to attack only terrorists, you will be attacking all sorts of people because you don't know where these people will be.
Only certain kinds of people count as terrorists,
right.
And sometimes that includes their children and civilian bystanders.
Can you imagine if like a leftist or a trans person or a Muslim person wrote a piece titled Sometimes Violence is the Answer? Like, blow these people up. Can you imagine? Yeah,
massive double standards apply.
Right.
And I mean, historically, for the oppressed, sometimes violence is the answer. I'm just throwing that out.
Okay, yes. But I would not hand it to Sam Harris, right?
You do not, under any circumstances.
You do not. Not under any circumstances. But he's also been, like, massively on a insanely transphobic like trajectory as well. Like, he was always gross.
That's the whole IDW, but go on.
But like, Iman Khalif, right, from the Olympics, the boxer, like
right, who's not trans,
trans,
that's established.
Yes, and he went on this whole rant about how the elections were lost because people did not like seeing a man, quote unquote, punch a woman in the face. He provided nothing to back up his statements. Nothing. But, like, somehow, trans people...
Dawkins ran with this, too, and J.K. Rowling, and it all ultimately came from some totally bogus right-wing sources, as far as I know.
Just absolute... Like, these are the people that claim to care about logic and science and reason and rationality and said that the wokes were too emotional and... But they are like everything that they claim that the left is.
Masks are off, I guess. I mean, look, it's always been that the people with a great deal of power get super emotional every time they're criticized even a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think the Achilles heel for these old new atheist bastards is that they thought they were immune. And so they logicked themselves back into a position of defending colonialism, imperialism, racism, misogyny, and their privilege on all fronts.
Right.
It's they can't see the operation of, all those things. They can't see how defensive and whiny and emotional they're being.
I mean, and it's not new. Like, just in retrospect, the whole New Atheist Project just seems to be like an attempt to legitimize Western imperialism and Western chauvinism and everything that people always said it was. And I was like, no. It's a genuine attempt to be very vocal and proud about secular humanist values. But
I will say, I'm not sure Daniel Dennett deserves to be lumped in with all that. He's an actual philosopher.
Yeah, but he did go a little transphobic.
Oh, did he? I mean, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. So,
I didn't really pay. Look, he doesn't get any press. He's a philosopher.
Right. That's perhaps why
I don't know how he got in the club in the first place. And then, honestly, one of my favorite biblical scholars, Hector Avalos, who unfortunately died recently, had a lot of health problems over the years, but he was a legit professor, knew his ancient languages like the back of his hand, and he wrote amazing books trashing basically all of traditional Western New Testament scholarship for, even though they're on some levels doing higher criticism and all this, still being super pro-Jesus and pro-Christian. He did a fantastic job of it. He knows the languages, right? And he just takes you through how these people are creating, your typical New Testament scholars are creating just complete distortions to make Jesus always come off as the best ethical teacher ever, even if they don't think he's divine, which is bullshit. And Avalos does a great job of showing that it's bullshit. And he associated himself with New Atheism in the introduction to his book, The Bad Jesus, for example, which I highly recommend. He was like, I think we need New Atheist scholarship. And I was like, this did not age well, and I'm sorry, Hector. Wish you hadn't done that, but you're, as Nick said about Gatsby, you're worth more than the rest of them all put together.
Before we go any further, I just want to make sure that you let people know where to find you and your work.
Oh, yeah. Right.
We kind of got straight into the conversation there.
As one does. Right. So I think you said I'm a co-founder of the Flytrap, also Flytrap Media. We do have one podcast under that umbrella right now, and hopefully we'll have more in the future. Cancel Me Daddy is now part of Flytrap Media.
Oh, that's cool. And, I know that one.
Flytrap is a new intersectional feminist outlet. We produce one essay or story, sometimes reported, per week. So we do journalism and commentary, but from this very strong feminist perspective. It's a really great, diverse group of people. And we have great branded art by Romy Torrico. So check out the Flytrap. I'm excited to be part of that project. And we really need more people to become paid subscribers, so we'll be able to keep doing it for more than a couple of years and maybe actually get paid something. After our Kickstarter, we divvied it up sort of based on who had put in X number, certain numbers of hours, right? So far I've made $700 for all the work I've been doing on the Flytrap book.
Nice.
So we need people to pay for it. But I think these kinds of indie worker-owned media collectives should be the future of media if we have any chance of rebuilding an American civil society that is not basically controlled by the useless, liberals and the fascists and tech bros. So There's that. Oh, and the slogan that we came up with at the beginning is "Fuck the algorithm," because the Flytrap. We do the kind of feminist commentary that we believe people want, and we want people to spread the word of mouth, help people find us, and not depend on algorithms. We have to break that ourselves. It's people power. So we're here to unfuck your algorithm. If you're willing to go find us, we're on Beehive. And then I still have my own personal newsletter, the Bugbear Dispatch. I put out an essay a week. Usually every other one is free. So there's more free content there than on the Flytrap. The Flytrap gives away one free piece a month. I called it the Bugbear Dispatch because even as I started writing it a year and a half ago, I considered myself to be, one of America's kind of current quintessential bugbears as a transgender woman, right? And that was accurate, I think, more accurate now than ever. So So I use this, bugbear as a metaphor because it's the boogeyman is something that people are afraid of, right? So I'm sort of trying to reclaim that language of, oh, look at the scary trans person writing about stuff. Anyway, a lot of the focus of that newsletter, apologies for the asshole motorcyclist who just drove by. But anyway, I write a lot about American politics from the perspective of understanding the Christian right in a critical way, not coddling, not enabling, not empathizing with. Just I grew up as an evangelical, right? So I was socialized into the plans that led to these horrors that they're perpetrating on the American people now, right? I know how it works from the inside. And so I talk about my own experience. I talk about current political situations, sometimes other more or less related things. Pretty general newsletter, really, but with those foci. Christianity and American society and contemporary politics.
Right, important stuff. But what I really wanted to talk to you about today was this whole, and there was like this huge bunch of like drama in the atheist scene, like I think November of last year.
Has it been that long?
Yeah, I was surprised too, because I was certain it was like a few weeks ago, but when I looked it up, it was like November of last year, apparently, that Freedom from Religion Foundation. So they published an article by an intern, a former intern, Kat Grant, about basically how a lot of society's views on gender are like steeped in religious traditions, and how those are still perpetuated today. And the people doing that perpetuating are like right-wing groups and anti-trans people who, quote, disregard both medical science and lived experience. So that pissed off a bunch of the new atheist douchebags, and Jerry Coyne, evolutionary biologist,
Right, so he's definitely an expert on endocrinology and the treatment of trans people. that was sarcasm.
Yes. But I mean, he is a scientist, so he should have some basic understanding of how these things progress. But he seems to be digging his heels in and clinging to, I don't know, like...
I mean, yeah, he should know better. Yeah. But he's an old white dude asshole.
Apparently, one asshole who has signed on to every single right-wing cause in the past, I don't know, decade that I've known of him. He has been, mocking the DEI stuff. He's been mocking wokes and progressives, and he used to defend Milo Yiannopoulos, and he's been defending Elon Musk's Sig Heil salute.
Always a good look, defending,
Nazis.
Actual pedophiles and Nazis. Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of pedophiles, he also did a whole, Jerry Sandusky, convicted pedophile. Was he actually that bad kind of post? Like, yeah.
Oh, Jesus, I missed that.
Yeah, so Jerry Coyne has a very interesting, by that, I mean horrifying, track record of defending awful shit. So when he saw someone say something very, very basic about like how, anti-science people are still perpetuating transphobia, he stepped in and asked Freedom from Religion Foundation if he could publish a response, which he titled, "Biology is not bigotry."
No, it's not, which is why you should have listened to Kat.
Right. And
you're not doing biology, you're doing bigotry.
Right. He's also published in the past an article titled "The Ideological Subversion of Biology." So, like, who's doing that, Jerry?
These dudes are just really, really afraid about their shriveling dicks as they age, aren't they?
I think you really hit the nail on the head. No pun intended.
So to speak.
Yeah, that is correct, I think. And so, like, you can see that he is extremely invested in his ideological biases. But what was surprising to me is that the FFRF, which posted this statement, in support of trans people, allowed Jerry Coyne to publish this awful rebuttal, which I believe did they delete it? There's so many layers to this drama.
Oh, yeah, they did take it down after major pushback, and then they issued a sort of apology, but it was a pretty shitty apology.
A non-apology.
They didn't apologize to trans people. They said something about it not being properly vetted or something, and their processes. They also didn't mention, who had like greenlit this and put it up with apparently little to no editing. Annie Laurie Gaylor. And apparently it actually was her, one of the co-presidents of FFRF. That's at least what Jerry Coyne says about who he worked with to put this up. And I mean, she felt, in some ways, I'm sure, obliged to him as he was a board member. But since they took it down and quasi-apologized, but not to the people most affected and not for all the right reasons, he and I think Dawkins and some others, they did quit. Oh, and Steven Pinker, that's who it was. Yeah,
yes. Steven Pinker. God. That guy is...
They petulantly quit the board of FFRF, which, good. I hope the organization gets better without them. Because honestly, it was one of the organizations that I respected before this. Like, sure, they did some stuff that's kind of cringe, but they seem to be doing a lot of... they have done a lot of good legal advocacy, and they seem to be moving in the right direction. But it's a small organization. Annie Laurie Gaylor and what's his name, the other co-president, they've been there for like a million years, and it really needs a generational change in leadership. Contrast what just happened there with how overall, not perfect, obviously, but let's take what we can get. American Atheist has done so much better under Nick Fish.
Yeah, you seem to have a lot more positive things to say about atheist organizations than I do, but better, sure.
But there are, it's in fits and starts, and it's imperfect, but there is a lot of their constituents now are not, the douches and, like absurd anti-theist reply guys who now are showing up in my comments constantly in my replies constantly on Blue Sky, which is annoying because they weren't.
Blue Sky is becoming a lot like old Twitter now.
They weren't really before, but there are more of them now, I guess.
Yeah.
There is a constituency that has gotten involved with these organizations. I think in many cases, this is my guess, but my surmise, but probably through, their local atheist organizations, which tend to be much more inclusive, and they're doing the on-the-ground stuff that the people in the organizations want done, right? So they're going to the school board meetings. I'm thinking about people like Jeannie Castine of Secular Arizona, who goes to the school board meetings.
That's good.
And stands up for the queer kids.
That's great.
Right? Against the fascists. And they go to the state legislature, and they advocate against shitty laws. And they very much understand from their work on the ground, which I don't think is a place Richard Dawkins has ever been.
Unless, he's like doing something to like oppose the scary Islamics or something. I don't know.
Nah, he's always up in the ivory tower.
Sure,
just,
yeah.
Maybe occasionally he projects a hologram of himself down to be like, yes, my children, destroy the Muslims. I don't know.
And the trans people.
Or, dear Muslima, take
that's right.
your hijab off.
Who can forget?
But, yeah, no, they understand that, like, fighting the Christian nationalists and doing secular advocacy very much also means doing advocacy for women's rights and LGBTQ rights, including trans rights. And there are people in the national organizations who have been moving things in that direction, too. And overall, despite some recent missteps that, we're both aware of, I would say American Atheist has been doing much better, and it should be encouraged to continue embracing diversity.
Oh, you mean like the double Me Too situations?
Yeah, those situations.
Right.
But they've diversified their leadership. They have led the charge for, considering social justice advocacy, particularly LGBTQ rights advocacy, a part of secular advocacy. And I just think that's a very positive step. And it's certainly what a lot of local atheist organizations on the ground are doing.
Yeah, that's great, I think. But I just wish that they would do a little more to kind of be the voice that opposes all the bigotry that the more prominent atheists are putting out there, be more vocal in pushing back against that, because effectively those are the most public atheist voices out there. And while these guys may do their local advocacy for queer kids, there's still nobody saying, you know what, these assholes, loudly saying, these assholes do not represent us.
I get the sense, I mean, I've heard some things like that from local advocates. They don't have national platforms for the most part, you know. And in some cases, like, they try to do it sort of diplomatically because they are still trying to bring their older constituency along. And I don't love that, but they're doing the right things in the right local battles. And I feel like someone like Nick Fish, and, you know, this is just, I do not speak for Nick Fish, right, or American Atheists, but I feel like he's sort of trying to do that too, to engineer a gradual shift that won't take the organization while making it better. Is that great? Is gradualism cool? No, not really.
It's just so gradual that I can't see it.
I mean, look, compare them to Center for Inquiry, which has gone.
That is like a right-wing hellhole, it seems like.
Yeah, it's funny because Center for Inquiry used to highlight some of my work in like their weekly secular roundup. I haven't seen them doing that for a very long time, and some of it even used to show up on the Dawkins Foundation website occasionally, right? Like, so I was good enough for that, but, you know, that never led to Dawkins or any of his sycophants reconsidering their position on trans people. But now I guess I'm just too trans to ever even be included in any of that, which I don't particularly care.
You should really know your place, just like immigrants and brown people and Muslims. Like, why can't everybody just know their place? White men, cis het men on top.
But yeah, I mean, Center for Inquiry just has totally doubled down. I mean, they merged, like, right, they're under the Richard Dawkins Foundation now.
Right, exactly.
So they sold their soul to the. Actually, it's an insult to the devil to say that because I like the devil. He's a much better literary.
Yeah.
They sold their soul to the atheist Jesus. Let's put it that way. Because I don't like Jesus. He really wasn't a great guy, in my view.
I didn't know him. Can't say.
read your Hector Avalos, and you'll see what I mean.
Okay. But yeah. So CFI was bad, like before they merged with the Richard Dawkins Foundation.
Yeah,
though.
They were going in a bad direction. I mean, they had. I can't remember exactly how they were involved with him, but they kind of started Andy and Go's career, I think.
Andy No, yes.
No, is that how it's pronounced? I apologize.
I think so, yeah.
Anyway, you know, the guy who does this, like, gotcha, right-wing, stupid, quote-unquote, journalism.
Yeah, he came from the new atheist scene, as did James fucking Lindsay. And Dawkins uplifted these voices. And, you know, as far as, like, these guys now being on the side of Christian nationalism when it comes to, like, bashing trans people while their rights are being rolled back, you know, in such an urgent and horrific climate, too. They did the same with Muslims or people of Muslim background. They did the same with feminists. They claim to be these, like, enlightened humanists who have, like, transcended beyond the need for religion, and they're so logical and reasonable, and, you know...
I'm Richard Dawkins, and I'm a feminist, but look, if an awkward man follows you into the elevator, or makes a Nazi salute, I think we need to understand him.
Exactly. Whereas feminists, fuck them. They're destroying everything. We don't need to give them the benefit of the doubt. And, I mean, he's praised Douglas Murray's, like, white nationalist book, and, like, the same week as, like, a white nationalist shooting, if I remember correctly. Like, it was called The War on the West. So... like, these guys are not dumb. They know.
Oh, and by the way, I am a cultural Christian. Dude, you always were.
Yeah, this is not new. You've been praising church bells for how long? Like, these are all, like... I don't even want to call them...
but not there's muezzins and there's calls to prayer. They're so gauche.
Yeah, so barbaric. Ugh. And, I mean, they're attacking everyone because, as you said earlier, like, their hierarchy is being threatened, and, you know, they're afraid. When you're accustomed to privilege, then equality feels like oppression.
If there's any justice, if things get back on track ever, history will not look kindly on these people. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to the secular advocacy scene, very much in the United States, I'm sure in Britain too. I mean, a lot of the organizations depend on Dawkins money, right? So there's a lot of cowardice out there. And I wish there was something other than the Dawkins Foundation that could provide a lot of funding for secular advocacy, because good secular advocacy matters.
Yes.
And hey, to people listening out there in podcast land, if you want to give money to secular advocacy, I strongly suggest you check out local, state level, regional, city level atheist or secular humanist advocacy scenes, because they are doing the work. So find one, vet one, give them your money. Pick a national organization if you want to. Just please don't pick the Center for Inquiry.
Yeah, make sure they're not like unhinged bigots first or sex pests, and then.
Yeah, honestly, I think Americans United for the Separation of Church and State is a pretty solid organization, and it is not a strictly atheist organization. Right. So they do a lot of good work with, religious people who also believe in the, sort of strict and strong separation of church and state. That's a solid national advocacy organization, I think. But I'm annoyed on all sides, which honestly, that's the story of my life. Yeah. Because should secular Americans, who now constitute about a third of the electorate, and we're heavily concentrated in the Democratic Party because there are no better choices, even though they suck.
Yeah.
Right. We deserve a seat at the table. We should be treated as a constituency. And if you actually look on secular, non-religious Americans want, and I'm just going to include everybody in that, right? Atheists, agnostics, various sorts of humanists, and just your nuns, who in some cases still have some metaphysical beliefs.
You mean N-O-N-E-S, not N-U-N-S.
Right, not the Catholic nuns.
Right.
Oh, yes, in some cases, the Catholic nuns still believe in God. I meant the N-O-N-E-S. That's how they're often referred to. This whole group, they want a secular society. They're no longer affiliated with organized religion, which is important, even if they still believe in Jesus or something. And they support broadly, for the most part, progressive politics. Like Annie Laurie Gaylor, Richard Dawkins, Center for Inquiry are just absolutely out of touch with these people. But like Secular Arizona, for example, which I name because I've worked with them multiple times because they're great. One of these on-the-ground, state-level secular advocacy organizations, they're fantastic. But the sort of national or international, when you look to like who speaks for atheism, and they don't, but they think they do, right? And unfortunately, a lot of just people who aren't necessarily following all the ins and outs of politics and secular advocacy organizations, they also think that Richard Dawkins and the Center for Inquiry speak for atheists and for secular people, but they don't. Secular people in the United States largely want liberal to progressive policies. And so I want us to be treated like a constituency, like, stakeholders, and be, recognized at least by the Democratic Party as people that they should care about. But let's be honest, they take their entire base for granted. I mean, at least the National Party.
They are too busy courting Liz and Dick Cheney.
Right? Yeah, I just want to slap them and be like, wake up. But I don't slap people, not an assaulter here.
So much for the tolerant left. Or to quote Sam Harris, maybe sometimes violence is the answer.
I mean, they're out of touch too. And so it's just like from all sides, I feel like, the atheist organizations often suck, but also I want to keep working to try to help them to get better. And in some cases, there is real improvement. And I'm talking about how, a national platform, because again, a lot of the local ones are doing great. Because I want atheists to, and just humanists, secular people, whatever, nuns, to have a seat at the table in national conversations that matter, and to have some, political power. And it's enough to drive you to despair, or at least day drinking.
Well, it's been that kind of year, to be honest, for a lot of reasons.
It's been that kind of decade.
Decade, yeah, I would say. That's fair. But don't day drink, kids and listeners.
Yes, do what I say, not what I do.
But back to this FFRF and CFI. So all these like old shitbag atheists, they quit because they got pissed that the Jerry Coyne response called "biology is not bigotry" was removed.
Yeah, that's basically what happened.
That's it.
Those three dudes,
So Pinker,
Richard Dawkins, Steven Pinker, and Coyne himself, they threw a tantrum, and and of course, what Annie Laurie Gaylor was doing there was taking, this kind of classic, we're atheists, we want reasonable debate, so we must have both sides.
Of course. This is how we got here, into this shitty reality.
I don't know if you're familiar with Freethinker magazine in the UK.
I don't know. Honestly, I've just blocked all of this stuff out for the past 5 years. At one point, I used to be like reading these things, even writing for some of them. I can't say which was which now because I was very put off by them all eventually.
Yeah, so Freethinker, recently I've been in touch with an editor there. It was, a prominent American atheist connected me to them, trying to get me some work, which is something that I greatly appreciate, right? But I don't think I can write for Freethinker, so I started looking at what they do, and of course, they've published interviews with TERFs, and a whole lot of other just shitty stuff. I was poking around with links there, by the way, and I ended up reading this article written by some TERF that just literally said out loud, and I'm sure I could find it again, but I don't remember exactly where it is right now, but basically just said, and if this means that we have to work with right-wing people, great, that's what we have to do to save women. And it's like,
save women. Look at
the masks are really off here.
Jesus.
Yeah, but anyway, it's just so funny. I always kind of think back to me, this sort of paradigmatic moment in the can't remember. I think it was the 1980s, early to mid 1980s, but it could have been the late 1970s. But when RadFem of the original RadFems, Andrea Dworkin shakes hands with Dr. James Dobson of Focus on the Family, and there is a picture of it. Anyone can, it's easy to find this picture on the internet. And it's like, yeah, they're doing it again. You would think that for anyone who really cares about women's rights, you do not, under any circumstances, got to shake the hand of James fucking Dobson. But Andrea Dworkin did it. This is where they end up. They're actually just reactionaries. When you get that far down the road of TERFdom, it's just an Ouroboros.
Sorry, who's James Dobson? I was trying to look for...
Please subscribe via patreon.com/nicemangoes to access the extended episode. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support it, there are several ways you can do that. You can share it online, talk about what you just heard. You can leave a 5-star review to help others find it too. And you can also subscribe via patreon.com/nicemangoes. No E in mangoes. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter before it's completely wrecked, you'll find me at Nice Mangoes. Again, no E in mangoes.